Whoop.
Greetings and salutations, welcome to the first ever episode of All Things. I am so excited to announce the first ever episode here today. My name is ThomSonic, I'm a play-by-play caster in the Benelux and sometimes the UK. And we are going to talk about all things ERLs. Middle's already laughing his ass off, exactly what I want to hear. We are going to be talking about European regional leagues. And I'm very excited to not do that alone, but with two very great people. Great people, great colleagues, great casters, and perhaps I might even say great friends. But that's a bit far-fetched. Yeah, it's a bit pressure now on you guys. It's so wholesome. It's wholesome ThomSonic streams.
That's so wholesome, Tom. What the hell, man?
Should I introduce you, Middlecott? Rude. I will introduce these two lovely people to you. First, Middlecott, since you want to take the spotlight anyway. It's a UK caster, but he's been everywhere. He's casting left and right. I cannot get him off of my screen. I don't know what this is. He's the one and only Udir prodigy. It's Middlecottisme. Introduce yourself. Tell us what you do, man.
Yes. So like Tom said, I'm an Udir one trick from the UK that occasionally does casting.
Poor you.
Yeah, I know. It's an affliction. It's an affliction. It really is. But yeah, from the UK. I mostly cast in the UK scene, UKEL, which if you don't know is the third tier ERL in the whole NLC, Nordics, UK weird mess, whatever that is. I also do an unofficial broadcast of the LJL, the Japanese league, with a couple of casts you may have heard from like Nymera, Initialize, Mars Swan. When I'm not doing casting, I am hosting the UKL and UKLC after shows for London esports, so looking at the games that happened on the day, breaking them down in a fairly humorous and nonchalant manner, and then I occasionally tweet stuff and stream as well. So yeah, bit of everything.
I think everyone loves the tweets you send out, Middlecott, but I'm very happy to have you here on the show, and it means a lot to me, and you're doing a lot in the UK scene, so I'm happy to hear your perspectives about it as well. We have one more person, and that person is a little bit more known in the Benelux, I think, because he's on my screen every Monday and every Tuesday. It's the one and only play-by-play caster. It's Craisze.
Hi. Yeah. So you pretty much summed it up pretty nicely there. I'm the caster for the Dutch and the Belgian league, and that's something that I've been able to do for the past year, and it's honestly been quite a blast to do that. I'm still a student, and that's what keeps me going. The university and esports combination, which sometimes almost went wrong, but that's something we're not going to talk about today. You know, we're going to focus on league and esports, and let that just be something that I spend quite a sum of my time in.
Hey, that's a beautiful bridge to what we're going to be talking about, because we are talking all things ERLs, all things European regional leagues, and maybe even a little bit of European Masters. So to give the people in chat who are not aware a little bit of a rundown, the ERLs are like leagues just below LEC basically. We have it in the UK, in the Benelux, Dutch League, Belgian League, everything, and the top one, basically the best one that wins the league, will go to the European Masters itself. Last week, Riot made some changes, or announced some changes for the next season. And if Riot changes things, people are gonna be happy or mad, mostly mad. And we have stuff to talk about. So this is why we are here. We will use the article they have made as some sort of a reference point, a sort of a guideline for our conversation, which I will post in chat right now. Not the screenshot of Middlecott's face, excuse me, because that would be a very inconvenient to do. We will do that link instead, which is just gonna be lovely. You can follow along with us and see what we're talking about. We use this mostly as a guideline, but the conversation can go anywhere. So without any further ado, let's just dive right into it. Normally we have ERLs being divided in two different things, major and minor ERLs. That's going to change, because it's going to be accredited ERLs and non-accredited ERLs. And basically the big difference between those two are several things, three that we are sure of. First thing is going to be that accredited ERLs need to host one offline event a year. Non-accredited do not have to host any offline events, meaning in person. The second thing is that accredited ERL teams will be added to the global contract database, where Riot keeps all the contracts of players and teams. Non-accredited ERLs will not have this. I'm not sure how this will go, but we are definitely going to talk about that one. And last but not least, the most important one, since we don't know all the facts yet, is that Riot is deciding when you can qualify as an accredited ERL and when you can apply in the first place. And that's going to be very important because it gives Riot a lot of power. So, with these general things now down the line, how much do we think will actually change next season if we hear the new distribution between this?
It's very difficult to say, to be perfectly honest, because reading through this article, obviously I looked onto it a little bit, and a couple of the other things that we're going to discuss. The changes that they've announced and what they've announced of what being an accredited and what being a non-accredited ERL actually means physically for the teams competing and for the viewers outside of the hosting a LAN thing, it's not particularly clear. In my opinion, or my understanding of the word accredited, that's approved by Riot, and they're certifying yes, this league is an operator that we trust, or is going to work in a way that we approve of. But outside of that, it's difficult to see what changes are going to be made until they announce anything more.
I think that sums it up quite well. I don't. Coming back to your question, I do think that the changes are going to be quite massive, especially for the leagues that have more teams than they are allowed starting next year, because that is obviously also a very big one. The 8-team limits that's going to turn around the neck for quite some of these leagues. And especially like, Exhibit A, Dutch and the Belgian League, we will merge, and that is something that will be started from the ground up again. And then we go from a total of 12 teams to a total of 8 teams. So I think it is quite safe to say that next year a lot of things will change in the ERL specifically. But when we take a look on it at like the bigger level, at like EU Masters, in the tournaments, in that perspective, I don't feel like the average EUM viewer will not notice that much in change when it comes to those competitive plays.
I think go on, Middle.
Yeah, I think that's generally my position as well. Any of the changes that Riot's going to be doing are going to be felt in the ERLs, unless there's specific stuff planned. I can't see this affecting EU Masters or any of the other sort of events that are being run.
Mm-hmm. I think EU Masters, like in the grand scheme of things, we won't see a very big change directly, but in the entire build-up, in the entire structure, I think there are definite changes that will change a little bit. For example, like the global contracting database, I think that's the legal department, which is kind of iffy now, because if you're in a non-accredited ERL and nothing gets like stored in the database, that doesn't sound really good for like the minor regions, for the non-accredited ones, right?
No, absolutely not. You need to have that legal aspect, and sometimes that has played a big part in the career of some players. I'm not going to drop any names.
Don't do it. It's dangerous territory.
I think we can all come up with one or two who have had some trouble with that regard, right?
Yes. Again, we won't name drop them. But there is some trouble regarding that, and it also leads back to the next point that they have been making. Like, Riot can decide when you qualify as an accredited ERL, and if you can even apply for it in the first place. That's a lot of power going over to Riot in general.
Yeah, I think so. Like, there's a bigger discussion that I think that we could have for like hours and hours and hours. About what the different goals of all the stakeholders here are, right? So, Riot, I think very obviously in the way that they have expanded over the past, I'm just going to say 5 years or something. It's very obvious that they want to try and keep as much of the competitions involving League of Legends sort of in-house, closed, at least in regards to official tournaments. That's why the IEMs were shut down a time ago. Why when they're opening up new servers, it tends to be Riot official servers rather than stuff like Garena, which we saw in Southeast Asia. almost a decade ago now. So I think this is just Riot again trying to expand in terms of the professionalism of the various leagues, and ensuring that there is a general standard to which every single ERL team, every single ERL player can expect from the league environment, where maybe that hasn't been the case in the past couple of years.
Riot and power, those two words go a little bit hand in hand, I believe. And especially in the esports scene, as you said, Middle, it's always been like, you know, Riot, especially in the last few years, taking as much control over tournaments and just the esports aspect, or just the sports aspect, as they obviously like to call it. But there is some things that are being announced right now that are still very vague to me, because we already have minor and major. Why do we have to change that to accredited and non-accredited? Because when you take a look at the word non-accredited, it also seems so like down there, you know?
Yeah, I don't particularly, if I was a player, I wouldn't particularly want to play in an ERL which isn't accredited by Riot. It'd be like, okay, this feels like this is kind of a bit of a Wild West almost. I don't know what I'm getting myself into. And I mean, we saw out of the PG Nationals, one of the teams there, I can't remember it for the life of me. Gaia? Yeah,
I think
basically just not paying anyone. And I think Italy's one of the regions that I've seen listed as not being a non-accredited ERL. I don't know if that was a leak or an official announcement. But I'm not sure how much that's actually going to protect players in that case. If we're still having ERLs being run by organizations that aren't accredited by Riot, then teams could just continue to get away with stuff like this.
And they say they want, of course, to improve the scene, but this, like you said, Craisze, it sounds almost like unprofessional ERL, like not high enough compared to the major ones. It almost feels like more of a setback to minor regions than it is an improvement or like a constructive thing that's going to change.
But let's face it, I think that this term might be something that will be on a lot of people's lips at the start of the split. And every once in a while, when a league gets promoted, I think that that's a term that we'll get more to hear from. And then everyone gets reminded about the division that is there. But in the end, I still believe that, you know, competitive integrity is the best. You know, it's the main focus of this. That's what I wanted to go for. But, you know, can that still be achieved with this division? And as you said, are players mainly going to be interested into investing into a non-accredited ERL when they realize that, you know, they might not be on the radar as much anymore?
Yeah.
But then at the same time, we have had cases, you know, where people from these minor ERLs do really rise to the top. It's just a very rocky road for them in the end, right?
Well, and the thing is, if you view the ERL system as a funnel to push talent into the LEC, you're still going to be having scouts looking at all of these regions. There's no changes, as far as I'm aware, to the number of imported or non-your region players that you can have on a team. So you're still going to be able to have people move from, I don't know, stuff like Balkans or Greek to one of the sort of the larger leagues like LFL or Prime League. So it's not going to change that. So why do you make this change? Is it standardization, and then perhaps you want to monetize the ERL scene a bit more and make it a bit more of a thing that Riot is able to do something with? Because I feel like as it stands, whilst you've got very strong local affinity for leagues, there's not much reason for let's say someone who's who watches Ultraliga to watch the NLC, or someone who watches
Definitely.
Dutch League to watch Prime League, because basically what happens is you win your league, and then the top one team in that league plays in one tournament for a couple of weeks, and then it's back to normal. It's like, well,
That's optimistic. A couple of weeks.
yeah, well, exactly. But like, what's the point in getting invested in other ERLs? And I think that's maybe the direction that Riot wants to go with this, and why they've made a couple of the other changes that we'll get into a little bit later, is because they want to sell the ERLs a bit more as a product, which would fit with all of this standardization, this accreditation, and other things they've talked about, like promoting them a bit more. So I think it's about integrating ERLs into the wider League of Legends ecosystem in that way, same as they've done with like academies in North America, where they are very heavily promoted. They are pushed. There's academy leagues on the LCS stream basically all the time. And I think maybe Riot EU wants to go in that sort of direction.
I think you mentioned two very good points. One, like pushing ERLs to be like of higher importance. One of the examples is probably going to be LFL, who is, you can maybe argue that it's maybe even higher in demand than LEC right now, because the people that are watching that league is
French,
insane.
Definitely.
Whoa,
exactly.
whoa.
Almost,
We're going
right?
for bold statements.
We're going for very bold statement. That's why we're here, right? We need to appeal the masses.
For the clips.
Exactly. Anyway, but leading back to what you said all the way at the beginning, like change in general, why do they want to change? I feel like they basically want to reinforce the structure they have already and try to find a way around it to make it even more sustainable, but I have doubts about this, if this is the way to do it, right? If the changes are that drastic, that major, because for now it just seems like, hey, we add a couple more rules and we call it differently.
Yeah, in that case, we really have to see how the things are going to turn out. We just have to, we can rumor a little bit. We can try to predict what's going to happen with the ERLs and how they eventually play out. And we obviously hope to get more insights as of why all this is happening, once EUM is over, because that's also the day that Riot has announced that they will release more information as of the differences between non-accredited and accredited ERLs. So right now it's just all a lot of rumors, and I'm honestly not sure why these changes are being made, even when I'm casting an ERL myself.
I'm not entirely sure either, and you already said, like, after EUM, like probably around September, they will announce the official announcements with it, like what is going to change exactly. But we already have some rumors, we already have some sources like getting away things, and I've seen, especially for the minor, like the non-accredited ERLs, there have been some interesting things written down. The 5 things that I have right here is that they all will be 8 teams, which you basically confirmed. Only the first team will, of course, go through the playoff. And if for the non-accredited ones, it seems to be a single elimination bracket playoff, so we no longer have like the waterfall thing, which is, in my opinion, very sad, because I feel like it's a very good playoff bracket, and I'm kind of interested into why Riot wants to enforce having a single bracket, because in my opinion that will be downfall. We will definitely zoom into that. 1 promotion relegation tournament per year, meaning that only 1 team of a non-accredited league could demote and 1 team could promote, or 1 or 2, that depends. Promote. I'm sorry, it's not my first language, okay? And at least 2K prize pool per team. That's what sources say. This is not confirmed, so don't worry, chat. It's not confirmed. But those are a couple of options, and they are going around right now. What's possibly going to change to the minor ones? Well, you cast a minor ERL, Craisze. What do you think if you hear these changes?
These are definitely some drastic changes. Obviously, playoffs is what you work for, and right now, with 6 teams in both Dutch and Belgian League, 4 of them already go through playoffs. We have 4 best out of 5s being played fully, and I feel like with 6 teams, this is definitely the best way to go. Because it just feels right, playoffs feels good, and that juggernaut match versus the 1 and the 2 from the regular season really adds a lot of value. Now, that's my main concern, like that whole playoffs thing, because you
Yeah.
do see in NFL, for example, they have this old LCK-esque bracket that they have. So if you're number one in regular season, you're automatically in the finals. If you're number two, you're already in semifinals. It's like this how you call it? It's not necessarily waterfall. I'm not sure what the official name is for.
Double
like that.
elimination gauntlet, I think, for
Yeah, I think that's
Gauntlet,
yeah,
something
right?
like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
something like that.
So you also see that playoffs can really determine how a league gets played and can really add some identity to it. And with being forced into playing a single elimination and only 4 teams while you're with 8 teams in the total league, you could opt for 6 or even 5. It just doesn't feel right to me to force those things onto leagues, not only for competitive integrity, because that's still what you really have to take into account, but mainly for, the identity for the leagues as well.
Yeah. I think, in my opinion, this sounds like a move which is motivated a little bit by money. Because
Money.
money. But obviously, to have a very large bracket with like a lower bracket, so like a losers bracket, you lose one game, you drop down into it, or to have a very long playoffs, that incurs additional production costs. That means that you've got to pay more for producers, you've got to pay more for casters, everything else that goes along with it.
Wait, you guys get money?
Wait, you guys get paid?
You guys get
man.
paid
What
to
the fuck?
cast. But no, so and obviously with COVID ending, we're going to be moving back towards most likely offline finals events where there's going to be like a stadium or some sort of like basement in like a hotel or something where everyone can turn up and watch people play. That stuff will cost money. And the way to reduce that cost is to have less days where you're doing that. And it sounds like there has been a decision made, if these leaks are correct, where they've gone, okay, how much can we get away with, or where can we cut the costs while still retaining the same level of viewership and engagement with the league? What's the thing that people don't realize they care about as much, or aren't as invested in as some of the other things that leagues do? Okay, playoffs. Well, scrap, let's say 50%, 70% of the days for that. We can save ourselves a bit more money, and then hopefully that money that's being saved is actually being put back into the league, and then you can invest that in other things.
It does sound interesting, but it also, again, does sound to me like non-accredited only take a downfall, only take a hit, and accredited don't take hits at all, right? And
yeah. I mean, we haven't heard what the accredited league thing means.
Of course, no speculation.
But yeah, so at this point, it feels a little bit like you're in the position that like sort of like the Nordic Championship and the UKLC were a few years ago, just before they got merged, where it wasn't necessarily as competitive, and we're starting to see mergers happening as well. And maybe it's a precursor to doing stuff like that, where you get the different regions, you get their leagues, you get their formats in place, and then later down the line, if you want to, if those regions continue to underperform, then you can start shoving stuff together. Like, I don't know, you can combine Greece and Balkans, let's say, and you can have that be a league. So maybe that's the direction that they're taking it. Otherwise, I wouldn't see the need necessarily for this level of standardization across the board.
Because you talk about combinations and unification, that's also our next point on the list, which is a very nice bridge. Thank you very much for that. The unification of 2 different leagues is being confirmed now. The Baltic League merging into the Polish ERL, so that's going to be Ultraliga. There's a lot of negative feedback on that, especially from the Baltics in general, because they basically said, okay, we're done for. And the Dutch League and the Belgian League are fusing back into one. This is a bit of an iffy thing. I'm not entirely sure about how I feel about this, because a couple of weeks ago, I think probably a month or two by this time, I had a talk show with Gentleman Bo and, for example, the owner of Ekazulu as well, and they were very much agreeing, like, hey, we should have a Benelux League once again. Just 10 or 12 teams that compete together, because the level will increase, level will higher. But also there's a negative feedback circle going around it as well. I see that Craisze is like taking a very good seat, so he wants to react to this.
No, I'm serious on this, because for Benelux League, once again, competitive integrity is going to increase. We've always wondered how will it be when KVM and PSV will face each other. How will that be? There is definitely a certain chance that those teams will get into the Benelux League. I don't know. We don't know. There has been no decisions made in that, as far as I know. But we did see this coming. I already knew that there was going to be a unification of the Dutch and the Belgian League. It was only a surprise for everyone that Riot decided to push it out that soon. And I don't quote me on this one, but I also heard that the Baltic Masters were not ready yet to make the announcement. They were also not sure. They just heard it very, very very soon before the announcement actually got out, and that's all because of leaks, right? Because someone leaked it, they had to make that announcement sooner than Riot wanted to. Same goes for Benelux League, by the way. But I think the biggest loser here is the Baltics, because this is so messed up. You have a great league. I think Baltic Masters, honestly, is a great production, and it's been really nice seeing them around. They've also developed, this brand identity, and now they're being merged into a way stronger league, the Ultra Liga. You have this limit of teams, most likely. So how many teams of the Baltic League will be added to the Ultra Liga? It's definitely not going to be a 50-50. It's probably just going to be the teams that are currently in the Ultra Liga plus 2 teams from the Baltic League. And that just feels so incredibly bad.
Yeah, that really hurts. I know a couple of the guys that do that cast the Baltics, and they're sort of like not completely happy with this because they really like it. It's a really good league.
Yeah.
I know one of the guys as well. A couple of the guys that are on the teams, and like you mentioned, I think the level of Baltic Masters is dramatically lower than Ultraliga. The teams wouldn't be able to compete if there was a 50-50 split, so we'll end up probably, like you said, with 2 teams going in. But the thing for me that this is really weird for is in terms of a broadcast aspect, because the Baltic broadcast was all done in English.
Yep.
Because English literacy in the Baltics is very, very high. And it means that it was a broadcast that everyone was able to watch, everyone was able to understand. Obviously,
you're not going to have an Estonian, Lithuanian.
No,
exactly.
Those languages are not even popular in the countries themselves.
Yeah, so it's like, so English was a nice lingua franca. It was, everyone sort of understood it. Going into Ultraliga, obviously that's a Polish broadcast. With the Baltic teams going into that, how many of the regular viewers of the Baltic Masters are actually going to be able to watch Ultraliga and engage with the product in the same way that they were engaging with Baltic Masters? I haven't Wikipedia'd Polish literacy in Estonia, but I imagine it's significantly lower than English. So it kind of feels like they're being left out to dry a little bit.
It certainly does seem to be the case. Like, the entire different language, no more English, of course, that's going to hurt it a lot. But that brings me back in general to the distribution of the leagues, of the accredited, non-accredited, doesn't really matter. But what I don't get is basically what I get from this, that Riot wants to have, okay, we have the accredited teams, the accredited ERLs, they are like the big boys, right? They are going to be like the big leagues, everyone's going to be watching that. Any minor ones, the non-accredited ones, are a little bit down there, but they will be seen as some sort of a talent ERL, right? So why would you downscale the teams, make a less popular, less demanding playoffs bracket, while you could just increase the teams, have it maybe not broadcasted that much, but just increase the amount of games so you will push that talent.
So this is a thing that I'm not too sure if more games actually equals better teams. In a lot of cases, I think the main focus should be the quality of the league. So, don't get me wrong. I think merging Baltic Masters and Ultraliga will make the two Baltic Masters teams that go into Ultraliga a lot better. Merging Benelux and Dutch leagues will make the teams that are in that top league better, because like it's just a numbers game. If you take the top X from one league, take the top X from another league, merge them together, provided that the leagues are like comparable, you've basically just got rid of the bottom half.
True.
Yeah. So you do make a more competitive league, but then like you mentioned, the minor teams kind of get left out to dry, and it doesn't really feel like the support would be there for them to actually improve, unless it just ends up being a case of we pump a bunch of money into these teams, they have 2 native players, 3 imports, and we just do it like that, which doesn't really seem to fit into the idea of building talent in each region, which I think is something that the ERL system should be aiming to do.
Is this a point where I have to add something?
I was looking to you expectantly. I'm looking very expectantly to you.
I like the sound of my own voice. I apologize.
Yeah, well, what do I have to say? As you said, you cut the bottom half of both leagues, and therefore competition gets better. Not sure how that's going to be for Baltics with Ultraliga. That's something I really have to figure out.
Yeah.
But since Dutch and the Belgium leagues, you know, they are very close, I would say, with level.
I agree.
They should really have a more exciting split. And this is also something. Here's the thing. This Benelux league, I don't think that the name has been decided on yet. So we're just going for Benelux league for now.
Yeah.
Yes.
There are a few things that we can say for sure. There will be more games, which has been a complaint from the players since day one, because you only play 10 games in the regular season spread out over 8 weeks, and if you're done, you're out. Then you play 10 games in a whole season. Not that much.
True.
And now you will at least have 16, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not 16, it's 14. You can't play yourself. So 14 games.
To be honest, I feel like all teams play themselves at least one time every season. You gotta be honest here.
Definitely. So
real question is, when are we getting some more Luxembourgish teams?
Oh, great question. Last split, or this entire year, we've had 1 player come from Luxembourg.
Oh, hell yeah.
But this split, he's not here anymore.
Rest in peace,
I hope
Luxembourg.
he's doing alright.
I reckon we should merge the Belgium and the Dutch league and then have Luxembourg as its own ERL. I think that's the fairest way to do it. I think that's
8 teams. That will definitely work.
With an entirely dedicated broadcaster.
Are there 40 League of Legends players in Luxembourg?
I don't want to know, actually.
Anyhow, I think the Benelux League, it's going to solve some of the problems that people have had with the Dutch and the Belgian leagues. But obviously it's going to be a shame as Thomas decided... Oh, I thought he just left us.
No, don't worry about it. I just turned on the lights. I turned on the lights, mate. I turned on the lights. Go on.
Anyhow. Those ground level issues are going to be solved. I'm just very, very sad that we have to wave goodbye to, the Dutch and the Belgian leagues' identities as we have seen them for the past 2 years, as we've grown to love them. And obviously, since I also, put my own brick in the wall for that. But I can assure you that the creative team is going to make something really, really awesome out of Benelux League, and that's something that we should not be worried about. That should not be the thing that we're stressed about. I think what some people should be stressed about is if their favorite team will actually make it to the final cut. And that's something that also worries me, because what's likely going to happen is that the teams with the most money are going to make the cut.
Yes, and I'm scared.
With the most with the best sponsors, with the biggest reach on social media, they will eventually probably make it. And then you have teams such as Starland Gaming Club, first split in, not that many, great big names as sponsors, like a PSV does, right? So it's like those new orgs that also bring in, the newest of talent, because those big orgs with a lot of money, they tend to go for more imports, really throw some money at their lineup.
Yeah.
And that is something that I will definitely miss, right? Teams like Starland, maybe even Dynasty.
Like it almost becomes like a business thing. Like the business way that they go about it. For example, Dynasty, I love that you mentioned that because they're known for it. Dynasty is a Dutch team which is known for like getting new talent every split. Yeah. They will always get 5 people that have almost never played ERLs before. They put them in a team and they say, okay, we're going to coach you, try to be the best you can. Those teams will basically be screwed, and they are the biggest help to an entire ERL.
Oh,
and then you have football teams like PSV and KVM, for example, which will most likely make the cut because it's a football club. They have money, right?
Yeah.
Middle, you wanted to say something?
No, I just... Oh, what Chris was saying about, like, this is reminding me of the whole LEC franchising situation where Unicorns of Love didn't get in.
Oh,
and it just hurt me, man, as an old school UOL fan. But I think, whilst there is the argument that takes a little bit out of the league, we've seen in the LEC that a league can recover from losing that little thing.
Definitely.
And for every Unicorns of Love that are a really cool team, there's a Mysterious Monkeys, who probably no one even remembers at this point, because of how impactful their span in EULCS was. So I think whilst it will hurt immediately, and those teams like Dynasty may drop out, there's always going to be that space and that drive to bring in new talent, because ultimately you can't just keep importing people. At some point, you need to field players from your own region. And the teams that are going to be best placed to find those players and to train them up and to make them genuine competitors on a European and then hopefully a world stage are going to be the teams with access to more money, are going to be the teams with access to more resources that can pay for proper coaching and analysts and scouts and really get those diamonds in the rough and polish them into something quite special.
And I do definitely hope that teams like Dynasty, like Echo Zulu, please just one of the two, right? That they will make the cuts, and that we do see them, continue to do that. And otherwise, I hope that those other teams will take over that identity. Make those talent training grounds your branding, your organization, because those things are really, really beautiful to see to develop over a split.
And in terms of cultivating a fan base as well, be the team with, we have got the all Dutch team or the all Belgian team.
Yes,
I think one of the great things about ERLs in general and about the European approach to competition and sport in general is it allows for like this this friendly rivalry and competition between countries that can really like sort of galvanize people in a positive way.
Definitely.
Derbies.
Yeah, and just like have fun with it, just roll with it. Make that part of your brand, and like build up these players.
There are two things that are still kind of worrying me about that. Is like you say, hey, I hope there's always a new team that takes up the talent. I very much hope that is going to be the case. But if you're going to be speaking about a promotion relegation tournament, how much is it worth taking that risk for it?
Well, we've seen, like, when you go into spring split, with a complete new lineup, with 4 or 3 or 5 rookies, that can definitely be a multi-split plan. And I think that those teams are always the most exciting to watch, personally.
Definitely.
Because you get an attachment to them, and you see them grow up. They're like your little baby, and but as it stands right now, the rumors, right? It's a 1 promotion relegation tournament at the end of the season, so not the split, this season.
Yep.
So that means that once you start building up a full rookie squad at spring split, you might end up 8th or 7th, might not even make playoffs in spring split. But when you go into summer, you keep that squad together, then they really can achieve great results, and then you don't have to worry about promotional relegation. And the best case I can give for this is Dynasty last year. They went into the summer split with like a lineup with all new players, I believe, except for their top laner.
Yes, I think you're correct.
And that split didn't make playoff. Oh, did they?
Dynasty didn't make playoffs.
No.
In summer they didn't. In spring they almost won it.
Yeah. Yes, that is true, and that's why they went to country finals. There you go.
Correct.
Refresh my memory there. And you saw like this growth, right? Not only over the split, but then country finals. They almost went into the finals again, and then during spring split, they were first in regular season, only to flop into the playoffs. But that's a story for a different time. It just shows that development is definitely possible, and it's so fun to watch.
And I think having only 1 relegation series incentivizes that. It incentivizes player development over over team and organizational development.
You should just summarize everything I say. You just said everything I said in the past 5 minutes using 5 words.
It's good.
I know. But yeah, that's what I'll do. That's just me. Izzy will explain something, and I'll just like sit there going, "Yep," in 1 sentence.
I very much like this. Like Craisze is filling.
No, I think to expand on it.
Yeah.
Yes, whilst full rookie rosters are fun to watch, and it's definitely nice to see that journey. In my opinion, a team with a couple of decent veterans on it will always help develop rookies in a more constructive manner.
Definitely, of course.
And at which point you could make the argument, well, if a team just does that, then you don't really benefit too much from there only being 1 relegation series. So I'm not too sure what the thinking behind that is. Because to me, whilst it offers a bit more stability to the league, I think promotion and relegation are a really key part of making sure that the best players and the best teams and the best staff rise to the top in a respective ERL. At which point, then they can start being noticed by like higher level teams, like your top ERL teams that are going to consistently qualify for EU Masters, or like LEC teams.
Definitely, will definitely raise the competitive level as a whole, and also to come back to what Craisze said, I think this is a very good combination you two guys have here. Like, Craisze can fill in the time, and then Middlecott can be like, this is what he said. So then at least we have a proper good talk show, so I will invite over you again sometime.
This is honestly so fun, because this is usually what I do when I'm casting. My color cast makes a very large and point, goes on for 2 minutes about macro. Meanwhile, I'm just zoning off. I'm
just zoning out.
And I just repeat the final sentence he said, like the conclusion.
Yes,
other words,
exactly.
And I move on. So we got. He still has that so much, Middle, that he even knows he's doing.
See, so this is the best bit. Sometimes, like when I'm in a green room or something, or like I'm just watching some people cast, like
Oh, God.
If you'll get the color caster will get to the end of like a point, and then something will just click where you're going, right, yeah, that guy wasn't listening at all. He'll say, yep, agree. He'll just go, yep, completely agree.
Yes, exactly. It happens too often in the comments.
I love it. I love it so much.
My God.
But we're drifting a little bit off, but I'm all down for it. There's one thing I wanted to come back to regarding this in general, is one more thing that we haven't addressed yet. With the merge, with the unification of certain leagues, yeah, we are talking promotion relegation, about the bottom teams, but the top teams, most of the time, only one team makes it to European Masters. With this unification, and I'm especially looking at the Baltics, because I feel like the Benelux League, it doesn't really matter if we have 1 or 2 teams going to EU Masters. Yes, it is fun, but how much does it change? For the Baltics, who've been performing quite well, now going into the Polish, better league, quote-unquote, how much of those teams are actually going to be able to make it to European Masters? How many people can actually represent their own country?
Well, honestly, I'm kind of hoping, as
None.
Middle says, none. God, that's brutal. It's still life.
I mean, like, you have to play Polish League. Like, I'm sorry.
Yeah. But
like, it's just how it works.
What I'm just hoping for is, honestly, a complete revamp of European Masters. I feel like...
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, there's something that has been coming up every single time during European Master season. The play-in stage is played over 3 days, and there's not a proper broadcast for it, only like the regional leagues, which are very fun to do. But, you know, as someone who's English and wants to see like, oh, what's happening, you know.
Yeah, we didn't have one. We didn't have
one. That's
an English
That's the problem.
broadcast.
Oh shit! I dropped
Like
that.
we are used to every single broadcast being in English at some point. It's a disgrace.
Yep.
Yeah, and all of a sudden, I remember doing European Masters play-ins last split, and we did some Fnatic Rising games, I believe it were. And like the producer after the game came up to me like, "Hey, Craisze, you know, we have so much people in the chat, and they're all like saying, what the fuck are they talking about? They don't understand a single word. They just want to see Fnatic play, and they called me biased for rooting for G2.
That's the
I
ice.
wasn't giving a praise to Fnatic. They were hating on me. Middle, do your people have something against me or what?
I mean,
Okay.
He needs to recover from this brief Middle.
I'm just trying to think. What the last time the English football team got beaten by the Dutch? Like, I'm not sure how recently it was. That's usually where the bias comes from.
But
No, I think people wanted to see an English broadcast of EU Masters.
Yeah.
Play-ins. And I think it was very weird that didn't happen. It's a little bit, I feel like, disjointed from this point, and I'm pretty sure it will happen this split. But yeah, I think in general the whole EU Masters is a bit weird the way it's done.
They have stated in the article as well that there will be another tournament besides European Masters for accredited and non-accredited teams.
Yeah, this is also something that I wanted to get into. Does it state that it's for both accredited and non-accredited?
I'm pretty certain it does.
Okay, because if it's going to be like a tournament for only the non-accredited teams, right, then you have like LEC, European Masters, and this other new tournament that's even below that. So people who want to get to know the new talent will not even see that because they're like, wow, these teams are shit. Okay, wait.
You play like European diamond, like high diamond or whatever it's called. Like if we've got like Masters, then like the next step is diamond.
Oh god.
Like oh my god, the European Diamond League,
Platinum,
European Silvers.
Yeah, it's that honestly that would be fun.
Just hurts.
That
It just hurts.
That would be so
for
cursed.
all the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think that's a genuinely interesting point though. Like having a tournament with all non-accredited teams, I don't actually see that being bad necessarily, provided it leads somewhere.
As long as it doesn't deny the ability to go to European Masters.
Okay, wait. Here's the
Yeah.
thing. This is my theory. They want to be playoffs for the non-accredited ERLs to be very short because it's single elimination. Only 4 teams can go there. In that way, the regular splits
God.
of those non-accredited ERLs will finish sooner,
Oh,
and
Yeah.
all the winners of those non-accredited ERLs, or maybe the top 2, who knows, are all thrown into this tournament that will replace the European Masters play-ins.
this is such a big brain move.
It's actually the
That would make
international
sense,
it's
right?
the international wildcard tournament,
But
but
th-
for
that-
Europe.
Yes!
It actually is. If that would be the case, that would be very cool, though. But that's just a
would- that would be
theory,
pretty
a
cool.
leak theory.
Game theory. Game theory.
Steven catchphrases left and right.
I'd not thought about that. Yeah,
But it would be
because then
fun.
you've actually got the ability to see these teams compete in just like
Mhm.
not getting beaten by Prime League teams, actually playing against teams that they can compete against.
Yeah,
You can also see PSV win.
for example, that would be very
I
nice.
mean, that's a bit of a stretch, mate.
Ouch.
You
Ouch.
still think they're not gonna win?
Ouch.
Sorry, mate. BTXL went to the U Masters final last split, so basically,
They didn't
And
qualify,
well,
right?
now-
I think they didn't qualify this time, right? Or did they?
yeah, they didn't. It's
But just imagine that you make the final. I cannot swear. You make the final, and then
I
you.
already did.
It's okay, buddy.
I think Craisze a couple times. So
Yeah, you know what? I really don't
Give
care.
a fuck.
Fuck that. Okay, anyway. Like, they make the final of European Masters, and now they're not even going, right?
it's rough.
Like, it shows the difference, which is extremely weird to me. But if you actually have, like, a proper play-in stage for them, where they will play teams at the same level, that almost sounds like they do at Worlds as well, right? The little tournament before we go into the actual thing, and most of the time an NA team and European team is thrown in there, because, yeah, NA CACW, right? So it does sound like an improvement overall, so if that would be the case, that would be very nice. And I want to touch on a point that you made earlier, Craisze, because you said, like, streams in own language. Yeah, streams in their own language, that they didn't care about Dutch or English in general. Co-streaming is now going to be a thing. Co-streaming as well. What do you feel about that?
So for a few leagues, I think that's going to be great because you have these, local Twitch streamers. Maybe there's let's take Ibai, from Spain.
Yeah.
If he co-streams, that's going to be a massive increase in viewers for that league. But in a small region like ours, one, we don't have many of those Twitch influencers, that a lot of people look at and all stream League of Legends. Let's narrow it down to League of Legends.
Yes.
Twitch influencers, because we have Domi, which is great, but is that going to increase the amount of viewers for the Benelux League? I doubt it.
There might be one new one that's coming up. Fabifon.
What are we talking about?
Fabifon.
Ooh.
Fabifon is picking up streaming, like, massively now, and he might be interested in doing so. But that's just thinking in the future, right?
Yeah, I think generally the point that Craisze is making, that I tend to agree, is that co-streaming is good provided it adds value.
Yes.
Yes.
Ibai will bring an audience that doesn't already watch ERLs, getting some other or watch the Spanish ERL, getting some other like a celebrity or a Twitch partner endorsement to watch your co-stream as well, will bring in people that don't watch ERLs.
Yes.
Alternate language broadcasts as well, I think can be good. So maybe you want to have a Danish or a Swedish stream of the NLC, for example, because that's just broadcasted in English. And maybe that brings in a crowd or something, or maybe the English broadcast of the Prime League.
Yeah.
But generally, the issue that I have with a lot of co-streaming is it's just going to suck the viewership of the mainstream. And at that point, you're not really benefiting anyone. You're just kind of taking viewership from one channel, moving it to another. And then with lowering viewership metrics, it could get to a really bad situation where it can start affecting things like
Sponsors.
It sponsors the actual viability of the league's broadcast in itself, which has a whole host of other ramifications that you don't really even want to think about. So I think co-streaming is a very good thing, but you really don't want to have too much of it. Otherwise, it could be very, very damaging to a league and brand as a whole.
I agree with you, but one thing I don't necessarily agree with is different languages. Like, for example, in LFL getting cast in English. I'm not entirely sure how that's going to work, but I think it will drop a lot of viewers from the league itself towards the English broadcast, right? Because we, in the Netherlands and in Belgium, we have a very big problem with people very much not liking Dutch casts in general. That will generally improve. But I'm scared that if we get an English proper broadcast for something like that, especially for minor regions, that a lot of local fans would move to that, and that would do really short to all the work that's been going into like those regions. But that's what I think language-wise.
Yeah,
I do want to jump into like points made about the LFL, because there and as well as the German league, for example, there's being more, the people are more comfortable with the broadcast being in their native language.
Yes.
And that is something that is really screwed up in the Netherlands, but that's also the reason why Baltic Masters was in English. Because, once again, they're not going to speak Russian, Estonian, Lithuanian, all those languages.
Makes sense.
Therefore, it really depends on which country you're looking at when you're making those arguments. I feel like for Benelux League, it could be nice. I feel some people might prefer it, but still, there's going to be very little competition when it comes to production-wise.
Definitely,
you know.
Definitely.
And therefore, the mainstream will still be, especially for smaller leagues. I predict will be the main source of attention.
Well, I mean, like, there's probably a law against like streaming the LFL in English, because I know France is very protective of their language. I think Germany, like the culture as well, of a lot of languages, is
very
the ERL is it's an extension of our country's local league scene, which I think is something that is lost on me a little bit as someone that watches NLC, which is very much you've got UK teams, Swedish, Norwegian, Danish, blah blah blah. You've got a lot of different countries all coming together. But if your League of Legends scene looks like, well, we've got the low leagues, and then leads into the next league, and then eventually leads into the ERL, that continuation, it's basically just an extension of the amateur tournaments that anyone can play in.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've got a greater connection to that broadcast than maybe someone like I would have for something like NLC, because it's a little bit less linearly accessible.
That makes a lot of sense. But in general, like, different languages is a bit far-fetched. There's nothing like finished on that. We are not certain. What they are certain of, at least what they state also in the article, that teams that play can stream the games for themselves. Meaning, like, if a Singularity plays against a Fnatic Rising, that Singularity could stream it themselves. Fnatic Rising could stream it themselves as well if they wanted to.
But then then the point is, like, I can definitely see Fnatic being able to add value to that. If you can pull in Bwipo to co-stream your
definitely
EMAS as well, NLC games. Holy moly, you have just gained an extra 10k viewers on your league, which is massive, especially for stuff like sponsors. But then a team like Singularity, not to hate them or anything, but they don't have those same level of connections.
Exactly.
So it becomes harder to justify doing it.
And I'm going to play like devil's advocate right here, right? Because that's what we do. Is this again, and I say again because we've stated it a couple of times now, is this again a change favoring bigger teams, bigger leagues?
I wouldn't necessarily say so, because I feel like once you have like a bigger, Twitch streamer, for example, co-streaming, let's not take the Benelux League as an example this time. Let's take GRL, right? A Greek influencer is streaming, and that pulls in a whole new audience into the league. Eventually, some will also maybe, watch the regular stream sometime, because I don't think, the person is going to go stream every single week,
Yeah.
It brings in a complete new audience. And therefore, I feel like in that way, a lot of leagues can benefit from it. And I'm not sure how it will be with bigger leagues, honestly, because let's say like the LFL already has massive amounts of viewers.
Yes,
and
insane.
that will now be, put into different jars, will all be spread out. And I feel like how much people are there left to reach for a league like the LFL?
Yeah.
Agreed. There's one small catch with it though. If people are co-streaming, they can only co-stream one team in which they are like contracted or assigned to. They cannot stream the entire thing. So it's only the team which you are like contracted with, so to say.
Yeah. And at that point it's just like, well, which league or team randomly happens to have that super charismatic person that is super known within the scene. Like whoever gets Ibai in Spain, congratulations, your viewership is massive.
Yep.
If there is a similar figure that can do that for Balkans or GLL, then it will happen. But in terms of reliable growth, I'm not sure if it's going to be pulling in the right sort of fans that will get completely invested in the league in general. If it's only one person streaming one game once, unless it's an absolute banger of a game, then I can't really see that generating repeated engagement in the league, especially if they are doing it as themselves and they're not there isn't a casting team behind it. Because one of the big things about casters is the ability to push narratives to make games more interesting. And as good as a random GLL game would be, to a viewer on a Twitch stream that isn't invested in the league, well, it's just red side versus blue side, and whoa, there's a lot of kills. But what's the pull to get you like really invested? That's the thing that I don't see happening.
It's more of, I think that's where lies the danger in it, because yeah, of course the goal is to get more viewers, but will those viewers, okay, you have more viewers, right? Let's say, okay, you get a popular streamer, maybe Fab of Those Fnatic Rising, and a lot of different people come to watch that game, but do they watch it for the game, or do they watch it for the personality? Of course the personality, and that's why the personality is there in the first place, to gather more viewers, but the viewers will not be, in my opinion, or how I see it right now, will not be engaged in the stories, will not be engaged in the league. They will be engaged with said person that they're watching. So
is it just view botting? It's basically
literally
just like
view botting.
It's just like view botting. It's just like someone raiding the mainstream.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing in general, right? But it is something to take into account.
It's such a grey area. It's such a grey area.
Have to find out.
We're gonna have to find out. And our last point actually already is going to be something interesting. It's the future of ERLs in general, because we have spoken a little bit about the changes that are going to happen, or we expect will happen. We've theorized a bit. Do we actually see a bright future for the ERLs, for the infrastructure that there is now in Europe? Because I feel like we are the most unique infrastructure and also the most efficient one in providing new talent. And all these changes aside, go on.
I think that still we're going to remain the competitive integrity, and I love the system with the different regional leagues and a connection with a local audience. I think that is something really, really great, and I'm glad that they keep those, and the core will still remain the same. And therefore, since this has been a project that has worked for, I believe, 4 years already, I just feel like this is something that is on the right trajectory, and I just hope to see great changes to the EU Masters format. Maybe with that change into the play-ins, what I just said before, that might be the case. I might just pull that out of my ass and Riot says I'll buy it.
They're watching the stream back, man.
Right now, right now.
Craisze dude, sign him.
I do want 1% of like all profits, but we can talk about it. It's negotiable.
You're asking for a lot, man.
Anyhow, what I do still see that this infrastructure works and that the core remains the same, and therefore the future is bright.
What do you think, Middle?
Yeah. I think the ERL system is distinctly European.
Yes.
And I think it would be a shame to reduce its importance in the current system, because it's such a great way of doing things that really taps into like what makes European-wide sporting competitions in general like so much fun to watch. We don't have a League of Legends World Cup where it's all the best players from each individual country all pairing off. We never get to see Denmark versus Korea, but we do get to see like France versus Italy, and Spain versus Portugal and stuff like that, which I think is inherently interesting, and just in terms of like telling stories is really, really nice to see.
And in general, I think if you even compare it to like a bigger thing, like for example the Olympics, right? They have a lot of teams there, for example, football clubs that have very competitive games, but there are always teams that are like, hey, this is not a very good region in that department, in that sport. So if they play against, say, those higher teams, they will probably go down with a huge amount as well. And in that case, I feel like European Masters is also something like, hey, it's the same level, it's the same quality. So that's also something that will persevere that complexity or that competitive integrity in general. You want to say something else?
Yeah, I wanted to, elaborate a little bit on what Middle said with, a France versus Italy, because in that way you also make even bigger storylines, bigger narratives. You said earlier also, your local derbies in your ERL, those local storylines that you get will be stretched even further on a European level, and then it's going to be all your Dutch friends or all your Greek friends or all your German friends versus the other one, and that's so fun to me, and that's so fun to watch, and that is, I think, also a little bit root European, that little competitiveness between all the countries. And that's what I love about European Masters. It's always like talking about which country beat you last time.
Yeah, yes, definitely.
It's always oh man, we got knocked out by LDLC again.
I mean, that's why I'm watching Telemasters in the corner of my on my other screen right now.
You're still doing that?
Oh my
God. It's UK versus Sweden, man. Like, I'm literally answering, looking down at you right now. By being distracted, I am reinforcing the point that you're making about having competitions between different countries is really, really cool.
It's all for the storyline. It all comes together.
Yes,
Thank you so much.
Storyline, narratives.
Well, you guys, you've heard it here first. We will still have Adams. We still have Marcoons. Latvienza will go into the LEC with the structure we have. We might see some changes, but that most will likely be in the lower departments, and that will translate maybe into a bigger picture, but it sounds like we will have a proper infrastructure. Yep.
Obviously, you have to talk about Marcoon and Vian.
Of course.
Turbo smurfing.
No, they were very, very great. I loved seeing them, but as a little bit of an Excel esports fan in the LEC, 7th. Again.
It's so unfortunate, man.
It hurt me so much.
Oh.
But I see that the title is not crying about Excel, so we will.
Hey, to be honest, at least Caterham made it to playoffs. So we have one person from Excel that's actually there. For now, I want to thank you, Craisze, and I want to thank you, Middlecott, for being here for the first ever episode. Really appreciated you guys, and having your insights here is actually really added to what we had to talk about. So Thank you. You're both lovely people. And next week, we will be back with the next episode of All Things, when I will be joined by Crowd from Phoenix Rising Glorious Gaming and my very good friend Rose B&D to talk all things Open Tour. So we're going to look at all the past weeks and to the playoffs, which are going to be lovely to see in the second division of the Netherlands. So make sure to tune in back next week, and thank you for watching, guys.